Random Thoughts. In this video, I'm going to read part of C.W. Hobley's book, Bantu Beliefs and Magic. And in this part, he discusses the question of Islam in the colonial Kenya and how there were British citizens or the white settlers on the land who were very much worried about the spread of Islam and who thought that Islam was more aligned with the Africans' way of life. And for that reason, they were worried that the blacks were likely to easily convert to Islam than convert to Christianity. And that was worrying. But Hobley himself says or writes saying that should not have been something that the white settlers should be worrying about, but because according to his or how he saw it, he did not see the possibility of the blacks becoming Muslim, of course, en masse. That's what he means. And this is what he says. He says, Mohammedanism needs a reference, for it is a factor of no mean importance in Africa. Some students of extreme views picture the growth of a pan-Islamic spirit, which will bind all the blacks against the Europeans, and missionary publications often refer to this as an imminent danger, possibly with the object of eliciting financial support for Christian propaganda. The writer has no such fears. Mohammedanism is spreading to a limited extent in East Africa, but there is little religious fervor behind it, and it is difficult to see how it can ever become more than a veneer with the upcountry tribes, for it's certain that they will never learn Arabic in order to be able to enjoy the Quran. So he tells us that there were people who were worried about the spread of Islam in Kenya, but he says most of them maybe were just saying these things as a way to raise funds from, of course, England or maybe North America. They were giving them this information about the danger of Islam, things like that, as a way to collect money from them. But he himself says that he did not see the possibility of the black people in the Kenyan colony converting to Islam en masse. And the reason he gives is that he did not see them being able to learn Arabic so that they can enjoy reading the Quran. I don't know whether that is his observation. I don't know. I'm struggling with that argument, with the logic behind that, because if they could not learn Arabic so that they enjoy Quran, but they could learn English so that they can enjoy the Bible, that becomes a little bit, I don't think it's an argument that he thought through. Now, he continued to say, among the upcountry people who come into intimate contact with Mohammedan life, such as those who come to coast towns to work, it is readily embraced, for it becomes the religion of the cooking pot. The Swahilis and such like are hospitable folk, but may not eat with unbelievers, and it is therefore very expedient for the upcountry stranger to become nominally a Mohammedan, for he may then dip his finger in the food bowl with his hosts. This one feels, I don't know, to some extent I think it could be accurate, to some extent it feels like there's something wrong with that way of thinking. But here's the thing. During the Islamic celebrations or days or holidays, there's this thing of the other Kenyans, and it even becomes like a genre of comedy online, that the rest of Kenyans will on that day dress as a Muslim and give themselves a name that sounds Islamic, so that they can attend those celebrations and get to eat. It is, if you watched local comedy, you know what I'm talking about. People joke about it, and it is interesting that Hobley says the same thing, that the people who left the upcountry to go to the coast often will convert, according to him, so that they can just get an opportunity to eat with the Swahilis and maybe the Arabs at the coast. The food is good, I guess, or the food was good. And so that's what he says, that's what he gives as the reason of the upcountry people converting to Islam. He says nominally, which means like they don't actually convert. I think that's what he means. He continued to say, apart from this, however, there is no doubt that the easy doctrines of Islam appeal to the African. They are suited to his temperament. And more important still is Islamism is not looked upon as an alien religion, for although the Arabs are few, the Swahilis, who form the greater number of the followers of Islam in the country, are only Africans who are a little more civilized and better clothed than their cousins from the upcountry, while Christianity is always associated with the coming of the Europeans and with their domination of the country. So, but he also says that, yeah, he can see, or he could see how Islam was likely to be more appealing to the Africans than Christianity was appealing to Africans. And he gives his reasons. For example, he says that the religion, the temperament of Islam was more suited, or the Africans could find it more easily to align with. He also says that the Africans could see that the majority of the people who believed in Islam were black, and he's talking about the Swahili, and he says they are more civilized than the rest, and that he takes that to be like a factor that could easily influence more Africans to join the religion. And then he says, of course, Christianity was again seen as, or at this time was seen as, a religion of people who had come to dominate the country. So there were negative feelings that could easily be cultivated among the Africans against Christianity. That's what he says about that. And he continued to say, although for many reasons Mohammedanism appears more suited to the black than Christianity, it is a ceremonial religion and it more of a countenances polygamy. So he says because it's a very ceremonial religion and it accept, or it allow polygamy, it was more suited to the black people. But he says, despite those reasons, or despite that, nevertheless, it is inadvisable that the state should in any way foster its progress in our African colonies, for it contains many dangerous elements. So he says, while it seems that this religion fits well the way of Africans, the state, the colonial government, he means, should of course limit the progress of that religion amongst the people. And he says, because it contains many dangerous elements. He continues, the Mohammedanism of East Africa is a mild variety, but there is much inflammable material lying about in the Mohammedan world, and it might at any time be blown over to that area. So he says, the Islam that existed in East Africa during this time was harmless. It was mild, as he calls it. It did not show any signs of being dangerous in any way. It was just a religion. But he says that there were elements or things that were dangerous in other parts of the world that then could find their way into the local Islamic culture. It seems like that's the argument he's making. Mohammedanism too has the reactionary influence. It stunts cultural development and it appears to be insusceptible to internal evolution. This is a huge argument to make that can be challenged in so many ways. He says that according to him, it has a reactionary influence on populations. And he says that it stunts cultural development. Now, um, that's a powerful statement to make, but if you look at history, I don't think that statement stands, because throughout human history, through history, of course, there have been commonwealths that have been Islam commonwealth, Muslim commonwealths that have done very well. And in fact, during the Dark Ages, Muslim commonwealths seemed to do better than Christian commonwealths when it came to knowledge and science and invention and things like that. So I think he's tying two things that should not be tied together. I think that's what he's doing. Then he continues to say, on these grounds, it will appear expedient that the bias of the state should be in favor of the eventual spread of Christianity, for it is a religion of the higher ethical type. This is another very bold statement to make. So he says the government should be actively pursuing or encouraging the spread of Christianity, because as he saw it, is a religion of a higher ethical type. So that were his views. Of course, these are very sensitive matters to talk about, and I understand. And I need to point out that I'm not anti or for either Christianity or Islam. So don't take this as me supporting or opposing whatever side. Those are my random thoughts.